Oh my God, there is no such thing as winning an argument. I know we all want the last word, we want to shatter someone's ego, we want to say, I told you so, but all these things just make you look goofy as hell. And let me tell you why. Arguing is a form of short-term gratification and emotional thinking. And a lot of women are susceptible to this type of thinking, not because we're more emotional than men, who will literally punch a hole through a wall, but because a lot of women are guided by expectations rather than goals. And we think that we can change people. Oh, if I show them reason, then they'll change. And when you are guided by expectations, you are going to be disappointed 100% of the time. And then you're going to show an emotional reaction when your expectation is not met. And when you do that, you are reactive. So you look weak, you look like you're not in control, and you look like somebody who can easily be pushed around and manipulated. And this is completely counterproductive to everything we're trying to do, because arguing only builds up resentment and defensiveness. So get this fantasy out of your head that there is such a thing as winning an argument, getting the last word, getting revenge, getting even. Those are all things that make you look like an idiot. All right? Respectfully. And I'm not telling you to let these things go so that you can end up being a loser, but because there is a much better tool at your disposal that you're not even aware of because you're so caught up in trying to argue with people. We've all been taught to stand up for ourselves and to possibly give people a piece of our mind. Now, the principle is right because it's rooted in self-respect, but the execution of this is completely wrong because most people don't actually know how to stand up for themselves in an effective way. And we don't want to use our love language of physical touch to punch someone in the face or punch a hole in the wall. We don't want to use our love language of words of affirmation to tell somebody that they're an asshole. I'm watching Jersey Shore, as you all know, for the first time, so I gotta integrate into the culture. Jerk off. There are 3 things we need to unlearn and 1 big old patriarchy loophole that we can exploit. Also, hi, if you're new here, I am Neeki, your host and the baddest bitch in the building, not to be confused with you, who's also the baddest bitch in the building. And today we are talking about girly law of power number 34. Never argue when you can make them look stupid. Like, are you stupid? Are you dumb? And my girly laws of power are inspired by the 48 laws of power. They are not one-to-one. My laws came out of my own brain. But when I read the 48 laws of power, I was like, wow, this is great. But we need a version for the girly pops because we can't just do the same thing as men and expect to get away with it and get the same result. So here we are. And this podcast was one of the fastest growing and most shared podcasts on Spotify in 2025. And my book, How to Hack the Patriarchy, recently became a #1 bestseller on Amazon. So I think it's safe to say that the girlies like what's happening on this channel. So without further ado, let's get into it. The 3 things we need to unlearn. Number 1, you need to get this butt crack idea out of your head that if you just explain enough, they will understand you. First of all, this is a form of emotional labor, and over-explaining, as I've discussed in a previous episode, makes you look extremely weak and makes you look like you are asking for permission to exist, because that's essentially what you're doing. When you're explaining and trying to get the other person to understand you, you are literally asking for permission to feel your truth because you think your truth is only valid if the other person understands it. Aside from that, this is also a form of self-absorption because a lot of us think that there's this objective truth. There's a truth out there, and if we just talk about it enough, we'll get to the truth. Okay, you're not Socrates performing dialectic, trying to get the moral truths of the world. Like, there is no the truth. There is only a truth. And your truth, what you think is real and valid and truthful, is informed by your beliefs. Emphasis on your. So no one experiences the world in the way you do. So no one sees things the way that you do. So what you think is a truth might not be a truth for somebody else who experienced the world in a completely different way from you. And the reason this self-absorbed belief that if I just explain everything enough, they'll understand it, the reason this makes you look so goofy is because we all have a natural sense of defensiveness and resistance. We are extremely resistant to change, and we also have a sense of defensiveness that we've built around ourselves like a force field since we were kids. Because the world is a harsh place. We're getting judged by every freaking corner. Someone's giving us side eye, someone's giving us evil eye, someone's giving us cross eye. So we've built this sense of defensiveness as a way to protect ourselves. And one of the things you're doing when you think of, oh, if I just explain it enough, they'll understand, and you argue, you're actually calling a person's intelligence into question, which is one of the worst things you can do, because intelligence is something we view as innate. You're either born smart or you're an idiot. The problem is most idiots don't realize they're idiots, but that's how we view intelligence. So if you call someone's intelligence into question, and this is why I talk about playing dumb as a tool, girly law power number 8, when you call someone's intelligence into question, you're attacking one of the most primitive, basic parts of their vanity. And that's not going to get you anywhere. That's why you look so goofy, because you're trying to get to a goal by getting there in the worst way possible. It's like you want to go from, I don't know, Toronto, where I live, to Europe, and you decide to cross the Atlantic Ocean in a canoe. Like, be so fucking for real. So to wrap up this first thing that we need to unlearn, remember, there is no such thing as winning an argument. There's no such thing as, oh, if I just talk about it enough, they'll understand. No. And the two things that we normally want when we get into an argument, which is to prove that we're right, but also to get to a resolution, those two things are completely at odds with one another. You can't be like, oh, I told you so, and then also try to have harmony and peace on earth.
I ask Santa for Christmas, peace on the world.
The second thing you need to unlearn is that you have to acknowledge everything. You have to react to everything and let the other person know that their message landed. I'm going to give you an example. If you read Patriarchy Hack 15 in my book, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. There was a show on Vice called Hate Thy Neighbor. It was hosted by a comedian named Jamali Maddox. And he would go into these wackadoodle communities, alt-right groups, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, like all these weirdos. And he would talk to them and get them talking about why they're part of these groups, and he'd join them on rallies, and basically just, it was like a day in the life. And his goal wasn't to change anyone's mind. It wasn't to, let them see the light. His goal was just to get access to these communities and kind of see what goes on in there. Now, the example of this show that I used in my book is from season 2, episode 1, where Jamali goes to this group of evangelical Christians somewhere in the south of the United States. Actually, I think it was Louisiana. And he joins them as they go on these anti-LGBTQ street preacher side quests. And the episode starts with Jamali talking to the head wackadoodle of the group. The group is called Bible Believers. And the head wackadoodle, his name is Reuben Israel. And in that scene, it's just Jamali and Reuben, and I think maybe his wife, because I guess somebody wanted to have sex with him. I don't know why. But in that scene, Reuben is telling Jamali about his homophobic beliefs. And although he's just spewing straight nonsense, he's relatively articulate and he's very calm. A few minutes later, The episode shows a scene where the Bible believers are at this Pride festival in New Orleans, and they are preaching into their megaphones. Reuben Israel has the megaphone, and he's literally saying the most outlandish, crazy, wackadoodle things. Like, they're talking about how butt sex will cause a prolapse rectum.
Love, baby, love. It's all about love.
There's nothing loving about ripping open the rectum of another human being.
Obviously, they were talking about this from experience, and they were just going off, and they were saying such inflammatory, crazy things. And it was such a shift from the way Reuben was talking to Jamali in private that it was really obvious that these people were trying to get a reaction out of the crowd. And when somebody from the crowd would approach them and start cussing them out or arguing with them, you could see their faces light up, like this is exactly what they wanted. The moral of this story, imagine if this was like a Disney fairy tale, the princess and the homophobe. All that to say, a lot of the time, people will say things to you simply to get a reaction. That's all they want. This is a psychological trick that they're playing because part of them is sick. They're sick and twisted, and they want to punish you, or they want to get a rise out of you. Whatever it is, they want to do that because they are energy vultures. And when you react, not only does that make you look weak, and not only are you playing right into their hands and giving them exactly what they want, but when you react, you are taking some of your energy and pouring it into them. Their glass is empty. Your glass might be full, it might be a quarter full, whatever it is. Your glass has some energy in it, theirs is empty. And when you react to what they're saying, you pour some energy into their glass, and their glass is no longer empty. So you literally gave them the little boost that they needed to go on with their day or to go on with their buffoonery. Again, another way you look goofy as hell, because you gave them exactly what they wanted. When you give them no reaction, you withhold what they wanted, and you keep your power, you keep your energy, and you let them fill in the gaps. And you leave things up to ambiguity. And usually when people fill in the gaps, they insert it with something negative. We usually tend to be inclined towards the negative, and so that's what they do. Imagine being left on read, sending a message to someone and you see that they read it and they never responded. Listen, they could have not responded because they accidentally clicked on it and then gone distracted with something else, or they could have clicked on it, read your message, and been like, what is this idiot saying? Closed it, laughed in your face, and then thrown their phone into the ocean. Who knows? But because that little red receipt was completely ambiguous, you're left wondering. So in real life, if you leave somebody on red, that will have so much more impact than reacting to them, especially if they were trying to get you to react as a way of punishing you. Okay, I'm rewatching The Office for like the 900th time, and I'm on season 5. Spoiler for anybody who hasn't watched it yet. But this is when Andy and Angela are planning their wedding, and Dwight gave Angela the ultimatum. She chose Andy. And one day Dwight comes into the office dressed in a Cornell crew neck and holding like a bunch of Cornell paraphernalia so that he can get a rise out of Andy. And that's his way of punishing Andy for being engaged to Angela. And the more Andy reacts to it, the more Dwight feels good about himself, because that's exactly what he was trying to do. He was trying to punish Andy and get him angry and worked up. And when Andy does that, Dwight gets happy. So watch out for people who are trying to punish you. All right. So that was item number 2 to unlearn, that you need to give a reaction or acknowledgement to everything that somebody says to you. And number 3, this one's really important. Listen, number 3, unlearn that words are the only form of communication. You probably know this. You know that most communication is nonverbal and it comes from body language. But if you really knew this, you wouldn't be listening to this episode, because you would be out there using your nonverbal communication to get what you want. Think of a time as a kid when you did something really naughty and your mom just gave you that look. Like, she gave you that really scary look that moms give you when you know you fucked up. And you know that when you get home, you're gonna have like 17 new assholes ripped for you. She never said anything. Not a word came out of her mouth, but you knew you were in for it. You knew when you got home there was gonna be a yelling match, or the chancla was gonna come out, or something was gonna happen. And that was scarier than her even saying anything. Nonverbal communication can be so much more effective than just blah 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 blah, opening your mouth and just saying. Silence, body language, eye contact, symbolism, which I'm going to get into, all of these things are oftentimes better communicators than words. The truth is generally seen, rarely heard. That's a quote from one of my colleagues, a fellow philosopher named Baltasar Gracian. And that is where we're going to be headed for the rest of this episode. So here's the patriarchy loophole that we can exploit. Women are often punished for acting like men, but we're also punished for standing up for ourselves. You're a bitch, you're bossy, you're aggressive, you're abrasive. There's no shortage of terms to describe a woman who's literally just asking for respect. Or a drama queen. I forgot that one. That's a big one. A drama queen, or someone who's just trying to start a cat fight. But there is a way to simply fly under the radar and get the outcome that you want. And to do that, we need to lean into the fact that female validation is one of the most powerful things that we can give. Literally just think about the last time a pretty woman gave you a compliment. Like, come here and give me a kiss already. Come on. Okay, serious. Gotta be serious. Female validation is one of the most powerful forms of energy we can give. And if we know how to give and withhold that, then we have so much power in getting what we want from other people. Hey baddies, it's Editing Neeki. As you probably noticed by now, we don't really do a lot of brand deals around here because I'm just not brand safe, and that's okay. I don't want to be. And when the revolution comes, you'll realize that a lot of the support is from baddies on Patreon. So in case you wanted to join the Patreon, I'm actually going to use a formula from Patriarchy Hack number 5 in my own book, Appeal to People's Self-Interest when Asking for Something. So in that chapter, I have a formula: self-interest plus strategic flattery plus sense of control. So for self-interest, I have bonus episodes, deleted episodes that never made it onto the main feed, baddie requested episodes. There's access to my phone line for baddies who want to call me, and if you want me to rip you a new asshole for like sleeping with your ex or something. There's voting power on which girly law of power drops next, access to my close friend story on Instagram. There's lots of perks, all right? Strategic flattery. This is for the baddies who have a little bit of extra cash on the side, or for the baddies who like supporting independent creators like yours truly. And sense of control. Obviously, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. It would be nice, but the world is your oyster, so do whatever you want. Either way, I'm just happy that you're here, and now it's time to get back to the episode. A few years ago, I had a birthday party. It was my first adult birthday party. I usually never do anything for my birthday. And I invited about a dozen of my friends to come over to my house, and I hosted a little dinner party. So I cooked food. I actually got my parents to help me cook Persian food. I had tagine, I had lasagna, we had a lentil salad, I also baked a cake. Everything was homemade, and I just told people, come over, I'm going to feed you, and you don't need to bring anything. So one of my friends comes, and I invited her and her husband. Now, the backstory on this person, let's call her Anastasia, because that's one of Cinderella's ugly stepsister's names. A few weeks before my birthday party was Anastasia's wedding. And a few months before that was her bridal shower. And a few months before that was her bachelorette weekend. And guess who was part of all of these festivities? Yours truly. Collectively, I spent hundreds of dollars on cash gifts for all of these events. Not to mention, I took a day off of work for her wedding, which was at 4 p.m. on a Friday. And I also had to do her bachelorette weekend a few weeks before I competed at the Canadian National Powerlifting Championships, where I was cutting weight. So it was really stressful to be spending a weekend eating out and being off track with my diet. It was difficult, but you know what? We do things for our friends. So all that to say, a lot of time, money, energy, and love went into all of these festivities. Now, fast forward to my birthday party. Anastasia arrives with her husband, who I invited because I figured they just got married 2 weeks ago. Let me invite them as a couple. Normally, I don't invite the boyfriends and the husbands. If I invite you, I invite you. I don't want a boy there. But this time, I was being nice. And she hands me my gift. It was wrapped in cute wrapping paper, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to open this. I want to see what it is. So we go to my room, and as I'm unwrapping the gift, I see what it is. It is a pack of travel-sized bottles and containers that you put your shampoo and creams and conditioners in. I was actually in shock. I'm like, girl, I just spent hundreds of dollars on you, and you come to my house for a home-cooked meal with your husband, and this is what you bring? Like, are you kidding me?
You don't offer friendship. You don't even think to call me Godfather. Instead, you come into my house on the day my daughter's to be married and you ask me to do murder. Money.
Either way, I thanked her for it and sent a thank you text the next day. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your gift. And it didn't really hit me like how cheap this was until a couple of days later, because one of our mutual friends had a housewarming party because she had just bought a house, and it was the same crew that was invited, like most of the people from my birthday. And Anastasia was there, and she gifted her a $150 gift card and a bunch of cute things from Zara home, which did not look cheap. So she probably spent over $200 on that housewarming gift, and a couple of days before that, probably spent $5 on my gift. Yeah. So it was at that moment that I'm like, friendship is done, time of death, 6:45 p.m., it's over. Now, a month later was her birthday, and she did a joint birthday dinner with a couple of the other girls in our friend group. It was just a small gathering of 6 people, and we went to a restaurant. Everyone covered their own dinner. Obviously, we covered some of the stuff that the birthday girls had. And the gift that I took for her was a travel set of little containers and bottles for your shampoo and conditioner and creams, but an even cheaper version than the one she got me. I went to this Chinese homeware store and I got a 2 for $5 deal. I got a blue pack and a pink pack, kept the pink pack for me, gave the blue pack to her. And that was it. I'm like, here you go. Here's a mirror of what you did so you can feel crappy about it. And our friendship is done. Goodbye. Bring the guillotine down. Rest in peace. In order to implement this law in your life, you first need to understand what your goal is. So remember to replace those expectations with a goal and ask yourself, what is the desired outcome that I want from this? And also ask yourself, how do I want to make that person feel? Because remember that we make decisions based on emotion. We feel first and decide second. So once you have these answers figured out, there are 2 ways that you can use this law. The first one is verbally, not to be confused with arguing. You're not using the verbals to argue with people. And I know you're probably a great orator.
Dorothy, I happen to be a wonderful orator, and 2 of the commissioners can verify that.
Blanche, orator means speaker.
Really?
But what you want to do with your words, instead of trying to shatter someone's ego, which is what a lot of women want to do, trigger it. Why would I want to shatter someone's ego when I can trigger it and use it to my advantage? Like, be so for real. There's a time and a place for shattering someone's ego, usually when they're on the chopping block and you're done with them. But it's better to trigger the ego, because someone who's driven by ego and driven by a need to prove themselves, remember Law 33, is more likely to do what you want and play right into your hands. Okay, be smart. Be smart about this. We don't need to shatter egos. We need to trigger them. Shara Seven says it so nicely. She says, I don't debate men, I bait them. So I'm going to give you a few examples of how to use your words to make someone look stupid and trigger their ego. And this is what I like to call, the baddies who've been listening for a while know this, be an anus and shift the onus. Okay, the onus, we put it on them. We put on the other person to prove themselves and explain and do all the heavy lifting instead of us filling in all the gaps. And I posted about being anus and shift the onus on Instagram, and someone commented the anus to onus pipeline, which I thought was so freaking funny. Y'all are funny. So here are some examples. I think this element of the law is better explained through examples, so I'm going to give you a few so you can understand what I mean. If someone is rude to you, for example, you have a coworker who's being kind of pissy, or a sales associate who's being kind of short with you, you say, it seems like you're having a rough day. And without saying, hey, you're being a jerk waff, you've told them, you're being kind of rude. I hear you, and fix yourself up. And it makes them look kind of stupid for treating you badly because you look like you're being empathetic and they look like they're being rude. Another example, if someone says something rude or inappropriate to you, especially in a meeting or in a conversation with people around, you pretend you didn't hear it and you ask them, sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you repeat what you said? Because chances are they're not going to want to repeat it. And usually when people make jokes, even if they're crude, crappy, wackadoodle jokes, if it doesn't land, it makes them look really stupid. So if someone makes a joke at your expense and you're not cool with it, ask them to repeat it. Make sure you show them that it didn't land, but not in a way that makes it look like you can't take a joke. Because again, we can't really react in the way that men do, or react in a way that makes us look like bitches or aggressive people and expect the same results. Another example, and this is more so for the hotheads who are listening, if someone cuts you off in traffic or doesn't signal and comes into your lane, instead of being like, use your signal, asshole, you might just tell them, hey, I think your turn signal is broken. Again, be an anus and shift the onus. Or one of my favorite ones, this is when you want to nudge your partner, usually a male partner because women are smarter, but usually you want to nudge your male partner's behavior in a certain way, or you want to train them to do something. I highly suggest using the power of suggestion. I did a whole episode on this, Girly Love Power 11, and this is one of the hacks in my book, again, Patriarchy Hack 11, that I updated the most. This is what I called the worried girlfriend act. Let's say you wanted your boyfriend to call you at a certain time and he didn't. Instead of calling him later and being like, why the hell didn't you call? I can't rely on you for anything, blah, 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 blah. You just pretend that you're really worried. Oh, I got so worried about you. You didn't call and I thought something happened to you. I was so worried. Oh my God. Okay, not that exaggerated, but you know what I mean? And in that way, they're not being nagged like you're their mom. They feel oddly cared for, but they also feel kind of dumb. They're like, oh, wow, I goofed off and played video games too late, didn't call her, and she got worried. And he feels stupid now because you think that he got into like a car accident while he was just there picking his nose and playing freaking Valorant. For more details on the power of suggestion, read Hack 11 in my book. And I suggest the book more than the episode because I put a lot of work into that one, and I divided it into workplace, dating, and housework, how to nudge people in a certain direction in all those different contexts. So it's really good. One of my favorite chapters. So all these examples come to show how you can simply say one or two sentences and use your words to trigger someone's ego, make them look a little stupid, a little dumb, and nudge their behavior in a direction that suits you. So notice how in all these examples, you avoid triggering someone's defensiveness by not naming the issue head on. Instead, what you do is you create gaps for them to fill or for them to correct. y'all are not using your creativity and your free will enough, because there's so many ways to get the outcome that you want, and just being like nagging, oh, why didn't you do this? Oh, blah, blah, blah. That's just going to trigger defensiveness and resentment. That's not going to get you anywhere. If anything, it is going to be counterproductive and get you the opposite outcome that you wanted. So trigger the person's ego and make them prove themselves by showing that they're not, in fact, the dummy that you're subtly saying that they are. Because remember, no one wants to appear dumb. So that was the first way, using words to make somebody look stupid. The second way is by acting as a mirror. And this is exactly what I did in the example I discussed earlier with the crappy gift that my former friend got me. Because in a lot of cases, the most effective way to teach a person a lesson is by making them face themselves. Most people don't like themselves. They don't want to see their own reflection. They don't want to see their own actions and their own face reflected back to them. And when they do, it is deeply unsettling because it triggers their own sense of self-loathing and their own insecurities that they can't come to terms with. And so what they do instead is they try to punish you and get a rise out of you and give you crappy gifts from the dollar store so that they can just circumvent all the self-help work they need to do to stop hating themselves and just make themselves feel better by thinking they made someone else feel worse. And acting as a mirror is really, really effective because it evokes one of the strongest emotions, especially one of the emotions that triggers change, which is shame, because you make them feel the repercussions of their actions rather than you simply telling them how it made you feel.
Oh, the gift that you gave me made me feel like you didn't value our friendship and didn't value all the time, love, effort, and money that I put into all of your wedding-related festivities directly before that. And on top of that, it was really hurtful that you gave me this cheap $5 gift that you probably dug out of a drawer, and then 2 days later, we go to a party for our friend's housewarming, and you dish out over $200 for that gift. And it just made me feel kind of crappy.
Okay, imagine I say that to her. She's probably just twirling her hair and zoning out and thinking about 12 other things. No one cares. But by doing the exact same thing that she did to me, but a little bit more exaggerated because I got a cheaper version than the cheap crap that she gave me, that makes the message land a lot harder because it evokes emotion. And remember, people feel first, decide second. Words mean nothing. You're not saying diddly, babes. You're not saying diddly. You need to make them feel the shame that they deserve to feel when they make you feel like garbage. So if you want to mirror what a person did to you, first pick which part of their behavior you want to objectify and make them feel ashamed of. For example, for me, it was simply that I wanted her to feel ashamed of the cheap, crappy gift she gave me. So pick that behavior and find a way to throw it back into their face, basically, and give them a taste of their own medicine. In my case, the timing worked out perfectly because her birthday was a month after mine. So that was literally the best timing I could ever ask for. In your case, figure out a good context that will make the mirroring land and not make you look stupid, because you want to make them look stupid, not you. And depending on your context, it might make more sense. It might evoke more shame to have a slightly exaggerated mirror, like how I gave an even cheaper version of the cheap gift she gave me. So use these cues and use your context to figure out what works best for your goals. And remember to be driven by your goal. You can also mirror people's behaviors by repeating their words back to them. I know that I talked about words in the previous part, but mirroring works with actions and with words. If you work corporate, especially, but in any industry, they all have their made up jargon and made up language. That is the perfect opportunity to mirror people's words back to them, because chances are you have a manager, a director, a supervisor, somebody who looks like they inhaled the HR handbook and they just spew out all this lingo and jargon and crap from whatever industry you're in. Great opportunity to repeat people's words back to them, especially if someone is giving you a hard time for something. repeating people's words back to them have a hypnotic effect. Use that power however you will. So again, it's all about triggering the ego rather than shattering it. Because they'll shatter their own ego. When they act like fools, they're already shattering their ego. They're doing that work for you. So let's talk about exceptions and wrap up this episode. There aren't that many exceptions to this law. I feel like I say this every episode. What I will say is the context is important. So don't try to make someone look stupid outright, like by putting them down or by saying a snarky remark, especially in front of other people. The reason you're doing this is because somebody crossed a line with you. So don't respond or retaliate by crossing a line in the same way they did. They're the bad guy. Leave it at that. Don't do something that's going to make you look like the bad guy, especially in front of other people, because that looks really, really bad. This also doesn't work for every type of behavior. Obviously, there are some cases where you need to confront a behavior head on and just discuss it directly, especially if it's a really egregious thing like your hoe-ass boyfriend chat on you or something like that. Determine what works best for that situation and what is more likely to get you the intended outcome that you want. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and thank you so much to anyone who's bought a copy of my book. We made it to the #1 spot on the bestseller list on Amazon. This would not have been possible without you, so I really, really, really appreciate every single one of you who's gotten a copy and shown me love and support in any way. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. I really do. So thank you all so much. All right. Until next time, don't forget that you are the baddest bitch in any building that you step foot in. In the meantime, stay bad. Love you. Bye.
All right, it's time to run through all my shout-outs of the bad bitches supporting on Patreon. I changed accents. Shout out to Kate, Danny, Lindsay, Emberly, Brittany, Hannah, Shara, Amanda, Adriana, Mina, Gemma, Katia, May, Naomi, Nilufar, Adelaide, Nadia, Faith, Amy, Melinda, Sophia M, Sophia K, Jada, Amara, and Kat. Thank you, baddies, so much for your support.
If you're gonna keep taking a penis in the